Welcome to TGIF.
Let's talk about food. I think most of us can agree we love to eat. Some of us love to eat more than others. But I would also guess that most of us try to eat healthy on a pretty regular basis. I mean, we do, eat bad sometimes, but try to offset the good and the bad. I've been on different eating plans through gym challenges and such, and I can be doing great on counting all the things I'm supposed to count and eliminating. But then there's that one food item that is right in front of me, and I lose it. I mean, I really lose.
Takes us to the word of the day, self-control.
I mean, I'm going to eat it. If dark chocolate is sitting there, I'm going to eat it. Now, we're probably not going to talk about self-control around food today, but when you think of self-control, there's so many areas in our life that we do need to learn how to implement.
Yeah. It was really hard because when I was walking here today, leaving the office, guess what? Somebody dropped off donuts. I was like, maybe one donut for the road? But no. So we are looking at self-control and in Proverbs. And if you remember, this was a big section to read as well. It was Proverbs 10 through 23. And so there are kind of two different sections here that we're looking at. So chapters 10 through 15, you see these sharp distinctions between the fool and the wise person. And that's kind of what we see in this first one we have here. So in Proverbs 15, verse 18, a hot-tempered person starts fights. A cool-tempered person stops fights. Starting fights, stop fights, the real contrast, hot temper, cool temper. And so that's what we see in these chapters of 10 through 15, a lot of that back and forth. So I like them because you can always see what's the good thing to do and what's the bad thing to do. And I think that's important for us because clear teaching about what it means to be wise and to have self-control, I think is important in today's world that we live in. Wise action comes from self-control. So in chapters 16 through 22, though, we have a little different. We don't see that same contrast between the two. What we rather see is the second part builds on the first part. And so, for example, in chapter 18, verse 2, a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing personal opinion. So that clarity comes in that, the pleasure, now it is personal. And so you see how it kind of builds on it. And so what we're talking about today is self-control. Probably not donuts, probably not food. What we're talking about self-control is having self-control and lacking self-control leads to behaviors. So if you lack self-control, you're going to produce different kinds of behaviors and when you have self-control. And there's a word that comes up a lot in here. So if you keep saying the word strife is a word that those who don't have self-control usually find themselves in strife.
And I think most people find themselves out of control. I mean, that's the opposite of self-control. And I think it's the busyness and all the things that we're always doing. We're going so many different directions that we are spiraling out of control and we don't know it. I mean, I know we're not really talking about food, but going back to that for a minute, people will tell me all the time, and we've experienced it, I've personally experienced it, we're doing great an eating plan, but then you're hurry. What happens? Drive-through fast food. I always said if I had a personal chef 7 nights a week, I could eat so healthy. So it's that making it a priority to pace your life in a sense that you can maintain a self-control isn't easy in such a fast-paced world.
Yeah. And so I think there's some real behaviors that we're looking at. So if you are questioning whether you have self-control in something, what are ways that you can start finding out? I think if you're getting in arguments all the time, that's a good way that something's going on in your life. There's something that's not in control and you need to start working on that. When you're in quarrels and when you're angry or when you're just angry all the time, there's something in that self-control that's not working well. If you hate this, I hate that, that's another indicator. You see that popping up a lot. And there is one that is hard to decipher, and that's greed. Because sometimes we think, we think we're accomplishing and getting ahead, and doing the right things. But then we look on the other side, and there's so many places where we could actually help with our finances, our resources, and we could be pushing it towards where the need is. And so it's really hard to tell if you're in greed, truly in greed. But I think it is when you become so protective of your resources that you have that you don't want to share. Kind of like the kid in kindergarten. I don't want to share. These are my toys. So a piece of it looks like that.
And self-control is one of the fruit of the Spirit. And this is probably, if not number one, number two, because patience is that fruit that most of us would say is the most challenging. And we're called to live within and live out the fruit of the Spirit, because that is the character of God. And it's not easy to do. So that self-control, when you think about the different places in your life where you're tempted, I mean, whether it be food, whether it be something financial, or to be so angry or to hate, it's how do you reel in that control? And I think part of it is realizing you're not in control. Self-control doesn't mean you're in control when it comes to these kind of decisions. God is in control of your life if that is who you give your life to. Now, it's not God's fault if I eat the chocolate when I shouldn't be eating the chocolate. That is control within my hand. Do I reach and get it right before me? Do I reach or do I not? But when I get so mad at somebody and I don't have the ability to reel in the tongue, I don't have the ability because I'm so angry. That's where it's so important that we seek the wisdom of God to help with that. So you can kind of play this on different sides of the coin, the kind of the fun, I can control some, because there are things we can control. But I think what the Proverbs these are getting at is that those things that you really can't probably do on your own. And just the fact that our word of the day is self-control and it's fruit of the Spirit. I mean, can you imagine if we all lived those out each and every day? It'd be everything would be great. But they're not easy.
They're not easy. And I think one thing that another piece of for us to pay attention to here is when we're talking about the people we hang out with. I mean, there's an element of that too, right? If you're hanging around angry people, if you're hanging around foolish people, if you're hanging around people that are always in confrontation, that's going to bleed into your way of living. And then you might not think, well, this isn't, I mean, they're doing it, I'm doing it, so everybody's doing it, so it must be okay. But in chapter 13, verse 20, I really like this one. Walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools and get in trouble. I think who you hang out with is a huge part of this. That's why we don't just hang out with good people, though, right? Because we know that we're called to people who are hurting and need to know the story of Jesus and need to understand the Savior. But the core of you growing as a better person means you're hanging out with people that are wise and they have learned a lot from life. And so I think that's a key in this whole section of Proverbs.
I think it definitely helps us stay balanced, because when you're in those situations that you just kind of slip because everyone's doing it, or it's really not that big of a deal, you don't realize the control that you've let get out of control in an area of your life. So when you bounce back to those spiritual mentors or friendships or connecting in a church community where you realize, oh wow, I really was a little bit too far to the right than I should have been. So question we leave you with: how can you make self-control a priority every day? Getting up and saying, I mean, think about it. We've often said you get up and you tell Lord, here I am. What do you want me to do today? Lord, here's my life. Lord, use me today. I mean, and a lot of you probably have thought you wake up with that. That's right there is that self-control. You are giving control to God on the big things, not whether or not you eat the chocolate. But it's almost like it's a giving up of it. So I think it should be a part of our day every day, but making it a priority. So I guess we could also say, when you're going to get really mad and fly off the handle, this week at somebody or something, just maybe count to 10 first and think self-control, self-control. Say it over and over. Self-control, self-control, self-control.
Or Jesus help me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's who you're calling out to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Help me, Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Help me.
So to get ahead for next week, you can read chapters 24 through 26. And we'll see you next time on TGIF. Bye.